Donna Godchaux, one of the only female voices to ever stand inside the original Grateful Dead universe, is now gone at 78. Fans feel like another piece of a disappearing era just vanished all at once. Because this wasn't just a singer, this was a woman who literally carried the sound of one of America's most mythical touring bands on her shoulders. Through chaos, through creativity, and through one of the wildest decades in rock history. The news hit the internet like a cold shock, with one of music's most meaningful harmonies suddenly becoming memory. She passed on Sunday, November 2nd, inside a hospice facility in Nashville, the same city where so much Southern music history was born. The confirmation first reached the public through Rolling Stone, where the family quietly shared that Donna had been fighting a lengthy struggle with cancer. The statement didn't try to dramatize her pain or the final months. It simply spoke like a family who loved her deeply and had finally run out of road. And then came one of the most poetic closings anyone could have imagined. A direct lyric reference from Dead songwriter Robert Hunter himself. "May the four winds blow her safely home." That single line sent fans into emotional freefall. Because it sounded less like a press release and more like a final verse. What most casual fans forget is, Donna didn't become legendary because she joined the Grateful Dead. She arrived there already carrying a resume that most singers would have killed for. Before she ever touched the stage with Jerry Garcia, she was already a Muscle Shoals background vocalist, the kind of secret weapon professional who leaves fingerprints on songs the world memorizes, but the world never sees. Her voice is literally stamped into some of the most emotional corners of the 1960s. Percy Sledge's "When a Man Loves a Woman," Elvis Presley's "Suspicious Minds," and even "In the Ghetto." She worked with Cher, Neil Diamond, Boz Scaggs, Duane Allman, names that define entire eras of music. Years later, she admitted that singing with Elvis was intense because it never felt casual. But she said everyone in the room was so professional, they didn't even break character until afterward. They only screamed like teenagers. After the session ended, when they walked into IHOP holding a Polaroid with Elvis like it was a golden ticket. Her entire life pivoted on one bold, impulsive moment. The kind of move that only makes sense in hindsight. She left Alabama, left the South, left session work and comfort, and drifted west into San Francisco, right into the peak counterculture firestorm of the early 70s. She sees the Grateful Dead live for the very first time. And instead of being intimidated, she walked straight up to Jerry Garcia after the show like someone who already knew her destiny. She didn't ask for an autograph. She didn't ask for a photo. She pitched her husband Keith for the band, directly, and Jerry gave her his home phone number on the spot. And that single interaction changed rock history. Because both of them, Donna and Keith, were suddenly inside one of the most unpredictable, unfiltered, creatively wild bands on Earth. Fans still talk about that moment like it was the most low-key door to the universe anyone ever slipped through. This was the era that cemented her place in rock mythology. Because her voice didn't just blend into the Grateful Dead, it became part of the identity of their most iconic run. Europe 72, Wake of the Flood, Terrapin Station. These records are considered required scripture for Deadheads, and Donna harmonies are part of what make them feel so moment-specific and alive. She was there for Cornell's 77, the show many fans still call the single greatest Dead performance ever captured, and she stood on stage with them when they hauled their entire circus to the pyramids of Egypt in 1978. But behind all the beauty and improvisation was a darker reality. The volume was insane, the monitoring was primitive, and she later admitted that yes, there are tapes where her vocals are pitchy. And she didn't blame it on the microphones alone. The drugs, the constant noise, the stress, and a marriage that was imploding behind the amplifiers. People who were around at the time recall screaming matches backstage. The sound of a husband and wife band inside a band, cracking under the same pressure that was making the music legendary. By 1979, there was no more holding it together. The Godchaux stepped away from the Grateful Dead. Not with fanfare, not with bitterness, just with the quiet understanding that the chapter was over. They tried to start fresh. They built. The Heart of Gold band and everyone around them said this was going to be their clean slate, their reset, their rebirth. But fate didn't wait. After their very first concert, Keith died in a car crash. Just like that, the entire future they were trying to rebuild evaporated overnight. The band didn't get a fighting chance. The momentum never got its second act, and Donna, who had already survived the chaos of the 70s, now had to survive something even harder. Loss that wasn't artistic or romantic or professional, but permanent. Most people would have walked away from music forever after that kind of loss. But Donna Jean didn't disappear. She rebuilt. She remarried in 1981 to Bay Area bassist David McKay, and instead of chasing arenas or chaos again, she eased herself back into music in smaller, safer ways. She sang in church. She took the occasional collaboration. And then, quietly, without the spotlight, she and McKay created their own indie label called Heart of Gold Records. She released an album in 1998, another in 2004, and then finally, in 2014, she released the record she called her full circle moment, Back Around. That album wasn't chasing trends or charts. It was her saying, "This is my journey. This is where all the roads led." A woman who once screamed with excitement in an IHOP, holding a Polaroid with Elvis, now putting her entire life into songs that looked backward, but healed forward. In the last years of her life, she spoke openly about regret, but never in a way that sounded defeated. She always said that regret only destroys you when you let it freeze you. Her philosophy was simple. You don't look backward long enough to drown in what might have been. You look ahead toward what could still exist. Even her own lyrics said it. Move forward, not backward. And now, with the news of her passing, fans everywhere are posting old Dead clips again. Like they're trying to touch the smoke of something that can never be rebuilt, only remembered. A harmony that once lived on stage is now only living in memory. And that's the sting. Because when someone like Donna Jean Godchaux leaves the world, you don't just lose a singer. You lose the echo of a decade that once felt immortal.